Just to do a quick introduction, Laura is an IBCLC, a Breastfeeding Success, working both in inpatient, so in the hospital, seeing people right after the babies are born, and then also in the outpatient clinic. So after people go home with the babies and need some extra support, they can come back to one of our outpatient clinics and see Laura as well. So thank you for being here. You're an expert on all things baby feeding. So I wanted to ask you something about bottles.
Okay.
Okay, so first of all, choosing a good baby bottle is something that probably a lot of people don't think about being an issue until they're there. And maybe they just grab a bottle and realize, oh, my baby is rejecting this bottle. My baby won't drink from this bottle. Does this mean my baby doesn't like bottles? Does this mean I got the wrong kind of bottle? A lot of reasons why you would need to choose a good bottle, more than even just that, I imagine. So to start with, when do people need to use bottles? I mean, under what circumstances, and when to start if you know you're going to be bottle feeding?
So there's a lot of factors that go into introducing a bottle. If you're wanting to do mostly just breastfeeding and you want to introduce a bottle, maybe you're going to be going back to work, or you just want to be able to give a bottle to like go to the store or something like that, then really we recommend exclusive breastfeeding the first 2 weeks, as long as baby is breastfeeding well and transferring milk well. About weeks 3 to 4 seems to be a good time to introduce a bottle. Bottles have a lot faster flow rates. Even if you use a slow flow nipple, it's going to have a lot faster flow rate than the breast will. So if you introduce a bottle too early when it's not needed, then the baby could develop a preference to the bottle and have trouble with breastfeeding.
Okay. And so to guard against that, you recommend kind of holding off on the bottle until you've really gotten breastfeeding sort of well established. So around a month or week 3 or 4.
Yes, weeks 3 to 4 seems to be a good time. Baby is kind of got breastfeeding down, baby's gaining well, and then you can start introducing a bottle here and there to kind of get them used to taking the bottle. And then when you go back to work, then it's a lot easier.
Okay. And then sometimes people need to start bottle feeding sooner, right? Or maybe are only going to do bottle feeding and not breastfeeding. And in that case, they'll introduce a bottle much sooner. And so in either of these situations, is there a particular type of bottle that you recommend, or are there different bottles for different purposes? And what should people look for?
So there are bottle nipples that you can get when you're here at the hospital. Those are pretty good for the first couple of days. They're pretty small. Baby's mouth is usually pretty small. Once you're home, the bottles can vary based on your needs, whether you're just doing formula feeding, if you're bottle feeding breast milk, if baby has any kind of oral anatomy issues, maybe like a higher palate or a tongue tie or anything like that, then they may need a specially shaped bottle to help them feed better.
Okay, and so if people are unsure about that, can they come see you or a lactation consultant like you to find out if there's a particular kind of bottle nipple their baby might need because of something like that?
Absolutely. That is something that we should all be able to do at a consult outpatient.
Okay, good to know. Okay, and so there are a bunch of different things, I guess, to think about. There's all kinds of weird shaped bottles. There's different size, they hold a certain amount of liquid. Some hold more, some hold less. Some are supposed to look and feel like a breast and some don't at all. Some are super squishy and some are made of glass. Like, what's the part that matters most, I guess? And should you
picking a bottle, then it depends on your needs. If you're mostly breastfeeding and you want to be able to introduce a bottle, you obviously want something that's going to be easily transitioned between breast and bottle. That's going to be a lot different type of bottle than if somebody is only bottle feeding, and it does make a difference. The type of nipple is important, but also the way the bottle is shaped is important. You want it to be comfortable in your hand. You see a lot of these bottles that are really wide or they're oddly shaped, and you think about having to hold it. And if your hand is like this, then it's probably going to cramp up by the time you're at the end of the bottle feed. So you want to have something that's comfortable in your hand, but also the baby can feed from. There are some nipples out there that will kind of collapse. And so while baby's sucking, the nipple has collapsed and they can't get any milk out. And that's obviously a problem. So there's lots of different nipples out there depending on your needs. I do have a sample bottle that we use in the clinic. Not use, but as an example, this is a really great nipple for somebody that wants to go between breastfeeding and bottle feeding. It's a very conical shaped nipple. It gradually comes out. Baby can latch onto the nipple really nice, and the nipple can be at the roof of the mouth. That kind of how we want the breast to be when they're breastfeeding. So then they can feed from it effectively. And this still gives them the same flange of their mouth and everything. So this is a really nice shaped bottle when you want to go between breastfeeding and bottle feeding. And it kind of feels nice in the hand too.
Okay. And so if you're just bottle feeding, that's not as critical that it be a replacement for the breast, or that it be like the breast so that the baby can go back and forth more easily. And in that case, you would just look for something that your baby seems to have an easier time with, right? But also you don't want the milk to pour out of it too fast, right? So then a nipple with smaller holes or fewer holes, like how does that work?
So they usually will have an age range of the flow. So you usually can get the ones based on your child's age. If your child is taking a long time with bottle feeding and really struggling at getting the milk out, you might have to move up to a little bit faster flow. You want to have the feed to be right around 20 minutes to have a bottle, maybe 15, 20 minutes. If they're taking a lot longer than that, or they seem to be struggling, then you'll want to go to a little bit faster flow. Okay.
Because you don't want to overfeed the babies when you're bottle feeding. It's easier to do, right, when you're bottle feeding.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we did an article and interview that included some of that information. So to help avoid the overfeeding when you're bottle feeding, the slower flow nipples are good, and also the paced bottle feeding method. And I'll link one of our videos that we have for that to this article too. Okay. So if you find a bottle, I mean, okay, what about when you're still pregnant and you know you're going to be using bottles? And so should you just commit, pick a bottle, put it on the registry, buy a whole bunch of them, and then hope it works, I guess? Or is there anything else? Are there any alternatives for people when, I mean, you don't really know what's going to work for your particular situation and your baby until they get here, right?
Yeah, it's really hard to predict what the baby's going to need. I wouldn't stock up on a bunch of one kind of bottle, maybe have a couple different options to try, because you don't necessarily know how it's going to feel in your hand, how baby is going to like it, if they may have other needs, or if you're planning on just breastfeeding, but latching isn't really working and you end up just pumping and bottle feeding. I mean, that's going to be different too.
Okay, and so then speaking of pumps, pumps usually come with a bottle, is that right? That kind of attaches and then the milk pours directly into the bottle and you just put the lid on it and feed the baby, or you store it. But, you know, if your pump comes with a particular kind of bottle, does that mean you're kind of stuck using that bottle, or can they be kind of interchangeable? How does that work?
It depends on the type of pump and the type of bottles. There are some pumps you can change the bottle out of them. So if they have the same width of the top, then different bottles can screw on to the pump, or you can pump into the bottles that are provided, and you can always pour them into a different pump, or you can change out the nipples maybe and put the type of nipple that you want to use on it. That can be useful as well. But if you really don't like the ones that come with it, you can always move it either into a storage bag or into another bottle that you like, maybe a smaller bottle, because these bottles, this is a 9-ounce bottle. This is huge. And most breastfed babies are going to be less than half of this bottle taken. And so if you pump and you only get about this much in the bottle, you're going to think you're not making very much. So if you can use a smaller bottle, then it kind of makes it seem like you're producing a lot more.
It does seem like bottles are kind of big. I've always wondered that. I mean, what baby really eats that much all at once?
Fed infants.
Okay.
Eventually, for a formula-fed infant, maybe about 9 or 10 months would probably be taking this whole bottle, but a breastfed baby would never take a full bottle like this.
Okay, that makes sense. That's a much older baby, so
Yes.
so kind of way down the road. Okay.
Yes.
But you don't start out using that much of anything, right?
No.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else that you can think of that someone might need to know about choosing bottles?
Just try different types, see kind of what works for you and your family. You can always make an appointment with a lactation consultant. Bottles, there's so many out there, and they're constantly coming out with new ones. And so it's really hard to predict what is going to be the right bottle for your family. So you may just have to try them. But we're here to help.
All right. And I mean, that sounds a little bit like it's going to be hard for everyone, but some babies will just take anything that's put in their mouth, right? So you may have no problem at all. It's the one that comes right out of your pump box and that's it. And you're set. Or you might need to do a little more, trial and error, but there isn't just like the one best bottle out there for everyone. And I think that part is a little bit good to understand when you're a new parent and you want to make sure you're getting it right, that there isn't just one right answer for everyone when it comes to bottles.
Correct. And even if you introduce a bottle between that 3 to 4 week period, the baby may still struggle with taking a bottle. And so it is important to get help with that. We can help with bottle refusal as well to try and help them with a bottle.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Laura. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me.